That morning, I had no idea I was standing before a 5-year-old boy would take God's breath away. A fall morning in 1963, Gary, Indiana. The morning was still a little chilly. The fog still lingered on the old windows, and the sounds of trucks and horns in Gary, Indiana were as familiar as ever. But my heart was not normal. I had a premonition that today my youngest son, Michael, would do something beyond my imagination. The feeling was vague but strong, as if God were whispering something important to me. I walked into the living room where the children practiced singing. My 7 sons gathered around a makeshift microphone made of an old stick, the top tilted to one side, the wires tangled together in a way that only a crowded house would understand. This was not unusual. Our house was always noisy, full of noise, laughter, singing, sometimes even nagging. But today, as soon as I saw Michael standing in front of the microphone that was too high for him, I felt like time stopped. I was familiar with that image. Michael always liked to jump forward, always wanted to try everything, but this was the first time I saw him so serious. His small hands gently touched the microphone body, then stroked it gently as if afraid of damaging it. The microphone was a whole foot higher than Michael, and when he raised his head to look, I saw his head tilted slightly to the left, exactly the same look that millions of people around the world would remember later. He was just a 5-year-old child, his body so small that his loose shirt made him look like he was swimming in the fabric, and yet he wanted to stand here in front of a microphone that was bigger than him. I clasped my hands together, feeling both pity and worry. Outsiders would definitely think, this kid is too young to sing, too young to stand in front of the stage, but in my heart, a ray of light had just flashed, so clearly that I almost cried. I remember every moment I saw my son singing in the house, in the kitchen while I cooked, in the bedroom while he put away his toys, even while I hung the laundry out in the yard. His voice came naturally like the wind through the trees, not forced, not trying to be cute. He sang as if music was born with him, but those were just family moments. No one else but me and his brothers could hear. Today he wanted to stand in front of a real microphone, wanted the world to hear. Michael's brothers, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, looked at each other. One of them even laughed. He's so little. I saw a little sadness in his eyes when he heard that, even just for a moment. But then he firmly raised his chin. It was the first time I saw Michael standing like that, not like a child, but like an artist. Joe, the children's father, stood behind him, his arms folded. He was a difficult man, always wanted everything to be serious. But even though he said nothing, I saw in his eyes a mixture of doubt and curiosity. It was only natural. How could we trust a 5-year-old to sing along with his brothers? Even I, who had listened to my son sing in silence, wasn't sure he would do anything remarkable in this rehearsal. But Michael knew, or he believed, or he was simply not afraid. I remember the look in his eyes as he turned to me, warm, big, sparkling eyes that seemed to contain the sky. They asked me, "Mommy, can I do it?" And I, with just a small nod, answered, "Go ahead, son." He turned around, his feet planted neatly, his little hands clasped together in front of him, ready. The mic was still too high. He had to stand on his toes a little. I was about to move forward to lower it, but then I stopped. There was something about that moment that made me feel that his reaching for the mic was a symbol of his entire life. He would always have to reach, overcome all barriers of age, of prejudice, of his small body. I stood still, both scared and expectant. Then Michael took a deep breath, a breath so deep that I wondered if his tiny lungs could take it. All his brothers stopped joking, stopped laughing, turned towards him. The room became unusually quiet. Then he opened his mouth. The first sound, oh, that sound. The voice rang out clearly, but with a resonance, a thickness, an emotion I had never heard from a child. I leaned forward slightly. Joe paused. His brother stood, eyes wide. He sang each word clearly, emphasizing each sentence as if he was born knowing how to tell stories with his voice. The room, always noisy, was suddenly silent, so quiet I could hear the pen drop on the table. It was as if time stood still to hear him play his first musical note. I saw everything change in that moment. It was like an invisible door opened and light flooded in. I didn't think I was witnessing a children's show. No, I wasn't. I was witnessing a moment of destiny, the moment a calling was revealed, the moment a child became an artist, the moment a tiny spark of light broke through our cramped room and spread to the world. I knew it before Joe had even said a word, before Motown had even heard the name Jackson, before millions had even heard the name Michael. I, the mother, was the first to see it, and that ray of light would take my child further than any limits I could have imagined that morning. When the first note rang out, it felt like an invisible hand had touched my spine. Michael was no longer the boy who couldn't reach the mic. In that moment, he became the perfect center of the room, as if the light in the house had automatically focused on him. All of us, me, Joe, his brothers, stood still, no one breathing, no one daring to break the moment. The 5-year-old's voice froze us, frozen. He continued singing, and each note seemed to cut through the air. His voice didn't just resonate, it touched. He had an instinctive way of emulating someone, as if expressing himself. I heard something in it that was so childlike, yet so deep, so real, so clear. As Michael moved his tiny hands to the beat, I knew he wasn't just singing, he was living every word, every breath. Joe still stood there with his arms folded, but his eyes had changed. There was no longer doubt in them. There was no longer the familiar squeamishness. There was shock, and maybe a little fear. Maybe he had just realized that his youngest son had something he had never had before, the ability to make people listen without effort. I turned to look at Michael's brothers. Each of them reacted differently. Jackie's eyes widened. Jermaine tilted his head in disbelief. Marlon froze in mid-fiddle, and Tito, always the calmest, couldn't hide his surprise. I looked at the kids and knew this was no ordinary family moment. This was the moment a band was formed and a star was born. Michael hit a higher note, and that was the moment I'll remember the most. He opened his mouth to sing, and as soon as he did, I heard someone in the kitchen drop a spoon on the floor. It was a small sound, but it rang out like thunder in the absolute silence. I didn't dare turn around to see who it was, perhaps one of the children from my relatives running past. But I knew, not just me, not just my family, but anyone in the house had to stop and listen. He didn't tremble. That made me both proud and worried. A 5-year-old should be shy, covering his face when he was noticed, afraid of making a mistake. But Michael didn't. He stood there as if he was born for this moment. His voice grew stronger and stronger, and I felt my heart squeeze. Joy, fear, and being pulled along by what he was creating. When Michael sang the last note, he closed his eyes for a moment, as if holding back the echo. Then he opened his eyes, looked around the room with a blank look, a look that had no idea what he was doing. He was just singing, like every day, but the people were different. I remember forcing my hand to my mouth, afraid that if I let my hand drop, I would burst into tears, not because I was sad, but because I felt like I had just witnessed something sacred, something bigger than me, bigger than my family, bigger than this tiny neighborhood. I absolutely knew Michael's life had just entered a new chapter, and then my heart started beating faster. Were we strong enough to protect him? Was this light too big for a child like him? Joe was the one to break the silence. He stepped forward, each step like a drum beat. He looked at Michael closely, as if assessing his every line, his every breath. Then he said softly, his voice low and short, "You'll sing, Led." It wasn't that sentence that brought me to tears. It was Michael's reaction. He didn't jump up with joy. He didn't grin. He didn't run to hug anyone. Instead, he just pursed his lips and nodded slightly, as if he already knew, as if he was just waiting for the adults to catch up with the truth he felt in his heart. I looked at my youngest son, the one who had cuddled into me last night to tell me a story, the tiny one who hugged his pillow to sleep, the one with hands as soft as lotus buds, and I saw before me no longer that little boy. I saw an artist in the making, an artist who could make a room tremble with a single note. And then as he stepped down from his perch, I heard my own heartbeat pounding in my ears like a drumbeat signaling a storm. I knew from the moment Michael touched that mic, everything would change. Everything. I don't know where this pride will take my son. I don't know what it will cost him. I only know one thing. The first note Michael played that day moved the room and our lives. There were evenings when I sat alone in the small kitchen, my hands on the peeling wooden table, and wondered what had happened to my family in just one day. That day, Michael sang, and the whole room fell silent. I still feel the vibrations from that moment. But just a few days later, I began to see other movements quieter but stronger than any storm I had ever witnessed. My house was already crowded. 7 boys, each with his own personality, each with his own energy level. A normal day was filled with running, practicing, arguing over a piece of cake, loud laughter, the sound of chairs and tables colliding. But from that day on, the sound in the house changed. Still noisy, still chaotic, but it began to have a rhythm. It began to have a center, and that center was Michael. From that day on, his brothers began to pay more attention during practice. They no longer laughed when Michael asked for a part to sing, no longer seeing him as a little brother who needed to be taken over in every game, but as a real member, an irreplaceable part, because everyone heard what I heard. Michael brought what the group needed. Every night they practiced in the living room. I sat beside him, patching clothes, sewing up the tears in the performance clothes, or tapping my foot lightly in the habit of a music lover. But in my heart, 2 emotions always collided, a sparkling pride and a vague but persistent worry. Joe often stood with his arms crossed watching the kids practice. His eyes were serious, sometimes to the point that even I felt nervous. But what I couldn't deny was, after the day Michael played that note, Joe changed. He suddenly became more urgent, more ambitious, as if he saw in the light that had just burst out of his youngest son a great opportunity that he couldn't let slip away. Day by day, the Jackson 5 began to take real shape. Tito practiced so diligently that his fingers were red and swollen. Jackie adjusted every little movement in the choreography. Jermaine worked on his singing to better match Michael's. Marlon, despite his clumsiness, tried to keep up with his brothers. And Michael, he never showed signs of fatigue. He practiced so hard that I had to say, "That's enough, son, take a break." But he just smiled and shook his head, his eyes shining as if they were illuminated from within. I knew I had to be extremely careful. On the one hand, I wanted to protect Michael from pressures that were inappropriate for his age. On the other hand, I also saw clearly music made him most real. He never sang to impress. He sang because he had a wave in his heart that would burst if he didn't express it. So I was always behind him, silently supporting him. Then came the special nights when the group performed in small clubs and restaurants in the city. I remember sitting alone by the window one night, clutching an old Bible, praying for the kids to be safe. Because I knew Michael was too young to stay up late, too young to stand in front of an adult audience, but every time he came home from a show, he would run in and hug me tightly, recounting every little detail, from the cheers to the flashing lights, with eyes so sparkling that I couldn't stop him from pursuing it. Then another night, when Joe came home late, he opened the door with a look of unconcealed joy on his face. He sat down at the kitchen table where I was preparing breakfast for the kids and said something that made my whole body tingle. "They want to see the kids, the Motown people." I stood still for a moment, still holding the kitchen towel, as if I couldn't believe I heard correctly. Motown. The name had long been a symbol of success, the birthplace of voices that made America listen. I knew if my child stepped into that place, life would never be the same. "Really, Joe?" I asked, my voice so low as to shatter a fragile dream. He nodded firmly. Not only that, they wanted to hear Michael sing. I turned around, looked into the room where the children slept piled on top of each other. Michael lay curled up against the corner, his arms hugging an old teddy bear, his face so peaceful it made my heart clench. How could such a small child be about to enter one of the biggest doors in music? He was too young. He hadn't even lived a childhood. But he had something no one else in the house had. Light. A clean, pure, unmistakable light. In the days that followed, my house seemed to breathe a new life. Joe tightened his practice schedule. The brothers tried their best, and Michael, strangely, grew calmer and calmer. He wasn't afraid. He didn't talk too much. He just focused, and his smile was always there, as if he knew what was ahead. And then the day came, the day we took the kids to meet the Motown people. From the old kitchen where we ate simple meals, from the cramped living room with the messy microphone wire, to the Motown door, the journey happened so fast I still can't believe my eyes. I held Michael's hand tightly as the kids walked into the studio. His hand was small and soft, but not shaking. He turned to look at me, his eyes saying, "Mom, I'm ready." And in that moment, I knew my kids didn't follow the music. The music followed him. After the Motown meeting, our lives changed so quickly that I felt like I was living in a whirlwind, being swept away without even touching down. The Jackson 5 began to get busier, longer rehearsals, more long trips, and especially, everyone's eyes were on Michael, my youngest son, the one who had just turned Motown upside down. I remember clearly the moment I first saw my son in a real studio, a large, cold studio surrounded by giant soundproof panels with a shiny microphone hanging in front of him. So different from the makeshift microphone in the house. So different that even I, who had seen him sing hundreds of times, felt scared. I was worried he would shake, worried he would lose his innocence, worried the bright lights would make him forget the joy of being a child. But no, Michael walked into the middle of the room as if he had been there all his life. The problem is, the bright lights only tell half the story. As the kids began to perform more, I began to see small signs that only a mother would notice. When Michael came home from a show, he would hold me tighter than usual. I could feel his breathing uneven, as if he had been so strong all day that he was exhausted. He would rub his head against my chest, saying nothing, like a baby bird trying to find shelter. Many people saw Michael smiling on stage, his dance moves decisive, his voice clear and natural. But I saw things the audience couldn't see. His eyes when he walked in the door, red from lack of sleep. His trembling fingers as he took off his performance shirt. The moment he sat on the bed, his legs dangling in the air, his mouth no longer talking or laughing, but just breathing deeply, breathing as if to catch his own breath. There was one night I will never forget. It was after a show in Chicago. As I was returning, I heard very light footsteps in the hallway. I knew it was Michael because he always walked more quietly than his brothers. I pushed open his door gently and saw him sitting on the edge of the bed, his hands on his knees, his eyes fixed on the opposite wall. He wasn't crying, but that look in his eyes, it made my heart ache. It was the look of a child trying to swallow his fatigue. Not great sadness, not terrible fear, just the feeling of being swept up in a cycle too fast for a child's heart to keep up. I walked in and sat down next to him. "Michael, are you okay?" I asked softly. He turned to look at me, his lips pursed and just nodded. But his eyes said otherwise. I stroked his hair, feeling his scalp hotter than usual. I put my hand on his back, small, thin enough that a strong wind could blow it away. Michael rested his head on my shoulder. Not for long, just a few seconds. But for me, that moment was a wake-up call, that my kid was carrying too much on his shoulders. There were rehearsals where I stood at the back of the room, quietly watching. Jermaine was always ready to cooperate. Tito was busy tuning his guitar. Jackie and Marlon were practicing their moves nonstop. Joe was giving serious direction. But in the middle of it all, Michael, the littlest, was the most attractive. All the eyes, all the expectations, all the pressure revolved around him. At times, I saw him so tired that he was a little wobbly. Joe would scold him gently because he thought he wasn't focused. But I could see it wasn't a lack of focus. It was the energy of a 5 or 6-year-old being drained. And then, what worried me most, Michael was getting used to not having time to play like a normal kid. He didn't complain, He didn't envy his friends. He didn't demand. That, for a kid, was even more dangerous. It accepted the sacrifice of childhood without knowing that it was something worth keeping. One afternoon, after practice, Michael sat down on the floor next to me. He put his head on my lap, his hands reaching up to play with the hem of my skirt like when he was a little kid. "Mommy," he asked softly, "do you think I sing well?" I was a little taken aback. "Good? I sing great." He closed his eyes, his voice as small as a breath. "I'm just afraid that one day people won't like me anymore." I squeezed his tiny hand. "Not because you have to sing well, but because you are you. People love you for that." But deep down, I understood. The world's love is great, and sometimes it's also very heavy for a child. One night, I watched Michael sleep, his head resting on the pillow, one hand resting lightly on his chest as if holding his breath after a long day. I pulled the blanket over him, kissed him gently on the forehead, but when I walked out of the room, my tears fell without me even realizing it, not because I was sad, but because I felt helpless. I can teach him to sing, to live kindly, to love, but I can't give him back the hours of play, the afternoons of running around, the carefree moments that his career is gradually taking away from him. The brighter the stage lights, the deeper the darkness behind the scenes. And I, the mother, am the only one who can see both clearly. There were nights when the house was quiet, when the world outside receded behind the black curtain of the sky, and I would sit alone by the window. The moonlight cast thin streaks across the floor, onto the wooden table where the children had argued over who would get the microphone first. And in that silence, the only thing I heard was not the wind, not the ticking of the clock, but Michael singing at the age of 5. That first note, strangely enough, has never left me. It still resonates in my memory, as if time could not fade it. A small voice, thin as silk, but strong as light shining into a deep well. When the Jackson 5 became a household name, when my children ran on stage with energy that brought the whole hall to its feet, I would stand backstage, hand on my chest to calm my heartbeat. People cheered, they shouted my children's names, but I was focused on one thing, Michael's small figure standing in the spotlight. I was proud. Who wouldn't be proud? But that pride always comes with another feeling, the feeling of standing under a starry sky, so beautiful it was touching, but also so vast it made you feel lost. I looked at Michael standing in front of thousands of people, and for a moment I saw the 5-year-old boy trying to stand on his toes to reach the mic that was high above his head. The contrast made my heart ache. I remember one time when the record label team handed me a magazine with Michael on the cover, his eyes sparkling, his smile radiant. I touched the cover and wondered, since when did my child become an icon? Since when did a child who loved to hug a pillow become someone the public followed every step of the way? There are moments when I wish I could take Michael back to the backyard, where I used to play music on the old radio and let the kids run around, laughing so loudly that the neighbors had to come over to warn them. But I also know that wish can't beat reality. Michael's voice is too big, too powerful, too rare. It doesn't belong in those 4 little walls anymore. It belongs in big stages, lit microphones, orchestras waiting for it to join in. One time, when Michael was still young but extremely busy, he sat next to me after a long performance. His head leaned slightly on my shoulder. "Mom," he called softly. "Yes?" "I just want to sing, but sometimes life goes too fast." I put my arms around him, my heart aching. "You just have to do what you love. As for the rest, I'll try to share." Michael didn't say anything more, but I could see in his eyes, a look so much more mature than his years, that my son knew the road ahead would not be all sunshine. Then the years passed. The Jackson 5 became a phenomenon. Michael grew up, his style changed, his voice matured in a way that would make any mother feel both proud and sad. The first albums, the tours, the amazing dance moves, it all happened so fast that sometimes I couldn't keep up. But no matter how loud the world was, no matter how bright the stage was, one thing never changed. Whenever Michael sang, I heard that 5-year-old boy. No matter what the song was, upbeat, deep, or powerful, I heard the first note he ever sang in that cramped room. It was as if Michael's music, no matter how complex, always retained a small corner reserved for that initial innocence. When Michael wrote those thoughtful songs, I knew that my son's soul had never ceased to yearn to live like a normal child. A part of my son forever belonged to that first note, pure, true, untouched by the world. And sometimes, in my dreams, I see it again. A small child, his shirt a little too loose, standing in front of a microphone higher than his head, singing a song that stopped time. I see myself standing there, my heart pounding, my hands shaking, and I know it all over again. My son was born for music. Music was born to carry my son's name. Looking back now, I understand that nothing in this world ever truly disappears. The stage lights will turn off. The tours will end. The photos, the magazines will fade. But Michael's first song, a small song from his young heart, remains. It lives in me. It lives in music lovers. And it lives in the melodies that my son left behind. And if anyone asks me, after all, what I remember most, I would not choose the big stages. I would not choose the applause. I would not choose the moments when the whole world watched my son. I would choose that day. The day a 5-year-old stood in front of a very big microphone. The day Michael's first note rang out and changed our lives. For me, it still resonates forever.